she cares to pose to the panel.
Thank you, Chairman Cole, for yielding. Thank you to the panelists for your testimony. Look, no member of Congress wants to be in a position to have to vote on a CR, but what we're considering here this evening is a conservative approach that places the emphasis exactly where it should be on strengthening our border policies and cutting spending to make an attempt to get our fiscal house in order, something all of us should be able to support. We are in this position for many reasons. More time is required, though, to complete our work. It's not ideal, but that's a fact. I certainly want the appropriations process to resume in regular order as soon as possible, but since we find ourselves here, we have a responsibility to address what Chairman Cole accurately described in his opening statement as one of our core functions, funding the government. It's interesting, every time we consider a spending bill, we hear cries of all the things we are killing or harming from the other side of the aisle. Frankly, it does get old. The left will say if we cut spending even by 1%, we're harming children, veterans, seniors, and basically every interest group they can list. The, quote, parade of horribles, as my colleague from Texas has stated. Here we are, though, when every American family is suffering from Biden's inflation. The cost of food and fuel alone has slashed household budgets. Americans are suffering more every day from Biden's disastrous open border policies. And what are the Democrats doing? Spending more and more and ignoring the porous southern border to the point where they appear to be tone deaf to the cries from constituents in places like New York, who at a press conference recently drowned out several of our colleagues with shouts of, close the border. The United States national debt is at $33 trillion and counting. That's nearly $100,000 per citizen and nearly $245,000 per taxpayer. It's not sustainable, and House Republicans seem to be the only ones in this city who care about trying to fix it. This CR isn't even cutting enough to get us back to pre-COVID spending levels, a time during which most economists agree the United States overspent then and spent more, and now they want to spend even more. We heard our colleague saying he finds these cuts offensive. It's been my experience that the left finds any cuts offensive. You know what I find offensive? Spending away the future of our children and grandchildren without any restraint and without any end in sight. CNN reported in early August that U.S. inflation means families are spending $709 more per month than 2 years ago. That's $8,508 a year when the national median income is only around $74,000 annually. Bidenflation and out-of-control government spending is costing American families more than 10% of their income. That is driving more and more families to food banks, and it will continue to absorb us if we don't try to change the spending trajectory of this country. Let's just remind all of us that this is a CR for 31 days to allow us to continue to do our work. I'm truly not sure why the left is suddenly concerned about DHS funding when they're not doing anything to secure the border anyway. Maybe this will be a come to Jesus meeting. Our friends on the other side of the aisle may finally wake up to the fact that we can't keep printing money, that our southern border must be secure, and we must take steps to get our fiscal house in order. Now that I have said all of that, Representative Bice, turning specifically to the border, I know you care as deeply as I do about the responsibility to protect our communities from the unfettered flow of illegal drugs coming across the southern border. I know that our friends on the other side of the aisle have chosen to close their eyes to the practical effects of the unsecured southern border, but whether you live on the border or in southern Indiana, 1,200 miles away, or in New York, the effects are visible. Representative Bice, I'm hoping you can talk more about the border measures included in the CR and why this CR is a prudent legislative vehicle to address this issue, as Representative Roy has already discussed.
Thank you for the question. And let me first start out by saying the previous comments as it relates to DHS cuts, I would remind my colleagues that money really isn't the issue. The problem is the administration's policies that they keep pushing forward, which has resulted in 7 million illegals crossing into this country in the last 2.5 years. As it relates to the bill and the policies that are being put forward, it's actually very simple. It is things like increasing the number of Border Patrol agents, ending catch and release policies, keeping families with children together while being detained at the border, putting an end to NGOs who are being funded by the government from providing transportation, lodging, or money to got-away immigrants. These NGOs are directly responsible for some of the influx of migrants into cities like New York. Look, this is a crisis You know, it was mentioned earlier, unmitigated disaster. We are dealing with a unprecedented number of individuals coming into this country. And the other side of the aisle wants to ignore that fact. This is a responsible, conservative bill that looks to do a couple of things. Protect and secure the border, ensure that our military and our veterans are funded, and to cut spending due to the $7 trillion of spending that's come forward in the last couple of years. I think this is reasonable. It's thoughtful. We're trying to come to some sort of, solution here for, frankly, an issue that should have been solved already, that keeps getting ignored at every turn. Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you for that response. I just want to say, in Indiana, we got through the 2008 recession by implementing temporary 8% cuts, and we fared better than most other states getting through the recession and coming out in a good position. Representative Vice, Representative Joyce, I really appreciate your work on this issue. Certainly your constituents are lucky to have you representing their interests. Thank you for your testimony. I appreciate you working and your time. And I yield back.
Thank you. Gentleman from New York.